Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about how Sermo, our social network, is changing the practice of medicine, why doctors find social networks valuable, and what we at Sermo are fiercely passionate about is a movement we call medical crowdsourcing, and we'll talk about how it has the power to transform medicine. First of all, we learned over the years as a social network in the US is that most doctors, or many doctors, actually work in isolation, they feel isolated, and they have a need for a place where they can be themselves, open up, and talk to their peers. So what Sermo does is allowing doctors to work in teams. And we're not just talking teams of 2 and 3, we're talking about teams of 20 all the way up to 200 doctors collaborating on one patient case in one day. Now that's powerful. Now first a few words about Sermo. Sermo is Latin for conversation. We are founded a decade ago, almost to the day, as the first social network for doctors. And we are now the largest, most trusted social network in the US and recently expanded into the UK. So I'm going to touch on 2 concepts today. First, what doctors do in a virtual doctor's lounge, like Sermo, and then the disruptive phenomenon of medical crowdsourcing, and then, which is one of the most important reasons why doctors are gathering online today. So, what kind of doctors are on Sermo? Is it all just young residents or old retired doctors? No, they're all handsome, good-looking guys like Dr. House here. Actually, our doctors are very much the average doctors you find in the US. And when you look at it statistically, we are benchmarking right up to neck to neck with American Medical Association in terms of gender split. 40% are PCPs, 60% specialists, and so on. So it's our everyday doctors who's treating all of us, our families and friends, is the doctors we have on Sermo. So the landscape of social networking is changing for doctors. Today, 66%, that's 2 out of 3 doctors in the US are using social networks for professional reasons. So the question is, what has fueled that popularity of social networking for doctors in the US? Well, the doctor's mindset has changed a lot. Today, doctors are frustrated. They feel often isolated. They have to deal with EMRs, hours of admin daily. They have more accountability, less pay, more liability, and more certification to go through. So they often feel squeezed in a box where they can't do much to move. So they often end up feeling disconnected from one another. So therefore, we have the rise of the virtual lounge for doctors. So the question is, what is a virtual lounge for doctors? And we have a good quote here from a doctor. So this is what doctors' lounges used to look like back in the day. This is what they looked like back in the 50s, in the 80s, and more like what they look like today. So I'm just scrolling through here. So today, as many doctors' lounges have disappeared, they're not really around, and the few that are around, often doctors don't have the time to go there. So to replace these doctors' lounges being gone, you now have virtual doctors' lounges. This is what they look like today. And just like you would in a real doctor's lounge, right? Doctors stopping by in these giant virtual rooms, chatting, popping in, popping out, asking advice, being humorous around the day, around patient cases, around what else they can do in a doctor's lounge. And here doctors make friendships, and they just have a place to be themselves and be comfortable. And when they're comfortable, that's when they start collaborating clinically. So you can just imagine, in a real doctor's lounge, right? One doctor says to the other, had this crazy case with a saw blade through the thumb. What would you guys have done, right? So this is a clinical case from Sermo. You can see all the peers are answering in on the comments. But what's different about Sermo, what you can't do in the real doctor's lounge, is you can also poll your peers. So you can ask a question, so you can formulate the question, you can formulate the answer choices, and then have doctors weighing in on your very case. In this case here, there's 78 peers helping this one doctor out on this one patient case. So we talked about the doctor's lounge and the social aspect of it, but the true value for global doctor's lounge is the ability for doctors to radically improve healthcare and learning from one another. For those of us that think that doctor's lounges are purely to decompress, it isn't, right? Doctors need a lounge to feel comfortable and not share their true feelings with one another, and that's when they start asking for help, asking for second opinions, helping each other out. So how did doctors used to learn, right? By candlelight. This is a picture by Rembrandt. And then came the amphitheater, which of course evolved into the amphitheater we know of today, where doctors are learning from one another, but it's for the exclusive, for the few, and not the broad masses of doctors. So today, how does medical crowdsourcing look like today? The real breakthrough is how doctors are learning and influencing each other in this very moment in time, right? Right now, there's thousands of doctors on Sermo spending time where they can learn from each other real time, instead of reading outdated textbooks or waiting for months or years for peer-reviewed articles or controlled clinical trials that often don't reflect the real world of medicine. Today, doctors are learning from one another through being interconnected through technology, right? That's what we call medical crowdsourcing. And you see that today, what it looks like. So what is crowdsourcing defined? There's a couple of definitions of it. Mashable, I think, has the best one, which is we're saying your crowdsourcing is distributed problem solving by distributing, it's hot in here, tasks to a large group of people. You're able to mine collective intelligence and access to quality and process work in parallel. So medical crowdsourcing today on Sermo, but you see a more modern case. In this case here, we have over 200 doctors weighing in, helping what is this biotical cast that the patient threw up. And we actually end up saving a medical life for this patient life. A kid came in, we end up sending him to the emergency room for a cardiac procedure. We had another doctor weighing in saying, look, we had the same thing happen to us a couple of years ago, couldn't figure out what it was. The teenager died shortly thereafter. So we often get asked, why do doctors end up going there, right? When they really don't have time to be there. And the answer is, even though doctors are highly qualified, no one doctor can know it all. So there's over 13,000 diseases out there that is registered with a bunch of symptoms. Most patients have comorbidities. So for any one doctor, no matter how talented, for him to be able to figure any one case out, it's often just not reasonable or can't do. And that's what we call the gray zone. So the gray zone is when a doctor says, look, I have a patient case where it would benefit from additional input from other peers. And we polled over 3,000 doctors in the US and in the G5 in Europe, and 99% of doctors are saying they see patients in the gray zone. A majority of doctors say that 1 in 5 of the cases they have would benefit from additional input from one of their peers. That's a lot of cases. So what's the result of this isolated decision-making going on? Well, it is misdiagnosis at an alarming rate. In the US, that cost is costing lives. In the US, you say the National Policy Center is saying 10 to 20% of cases are misdiagnosed, with 1 in 5 being fatal, or if having potentially fatal consequences. And you have more patients dying in the US of misdiagnosis than you do of breast cancer. So over 40,000 cases. So let's do some medical crowdsourcing stats. So doctors, instead of taking it upon themselves to break down these silos and reach out to their peers in other specialties and help them make sometimes life and death threatening decisions. So, we go through. So on Sermo today, doctors spend over 37,000 hours with us monthly in the US and in the UK. Air just came in, very nice. And last year we solved over 5,000 challenging, gray zone patient cases. So in any one patient case, on average, when you do the math, get over 200 years of medical experience being crowdsourced down at zero cost to the patient, or the healthcare system, and most of that activity happens within 24 hours. So normally we get the first answers in within 90 minutes, and we have almost all the cases get solved within 24 hours. So what's the next step for diagnosis? So in our patient cases last year, those 3,500 gray zone cases got viewed over 700,000 times and received over 50,000 inputs from other doctors, again at no cost to any healthcare system. So if we recall the medical amphitheater concept, it's the important multiplier effect that happens when a case is posted, right? It is viewed and discussed by many. This is where influencing and learning is happening, and life-saving. So this is the rise of a new key opinion leader, what we have termed the every doctor KOL. And it is one that, the everyday KOL is the doctor at that moment in time that has very specific experience to help out on that one patient case. And that is the every doctor KOL. And the peers around him can learn from that every doctor KOL in that moment in time on that very real case. And that's the modern amphitheater. So, and doctors want to be heard by others. They want to get challenged and they want to learn from one another. So that doctor, the everyday KOL doctor, he combines accepted medical research with years of real-world anecdotal experience, as well as opinions from the peers to arrive at the best result on a patient case, on one of those great difficult cases. And that's the every doctor KOL, the one in the trenches who sees real-life patients and are dealing with it day to day. So finally, these medical crowdsourcing numbers we talked about today are just in the US, and we just entered into the UK a short time ago. We're about to globalize Sermo very shortly, opening up one country at a time. So be able to see this medical crowdsourcing cross-border, like we already seen today between US and UK, is very exciting for us. And we're tremendously, we are proud to be in the forefront of the movement at Sermo, and looking forward to really making it global across all continents. Thank you very much.
I just want to ask you one question before you sit and we go to the next person, which is, could you tell us a bit about going into the UK? How did you approach that?
Yeah, so how do we approach it? Well, we had a awareness campaign among UK doctors, and I'm happy and proud to say that we already have 38,000 UK doctors being part of it. I myself am posting as a UK, not of course making any comments, but seeing what a UK doctor sees on a daily basis. They come in the morning, they see US cases, UK cases, and they are crowdsourcing together.